The afternoon sun hung low in the sky, painting the quiet suburban street in shades of gold. Jamal Thompson, a 12-year-old boy with bright, curious eyes, walked slowly along the sidewalk. In his hands, he carefully carried a large cardboard box. The top flaps opened just enough to show a glimpse of his school science project. A handmade model rocket, it had taken him 3 weeks to build. He was proud of it. He had even skipped playing video games after school just so he could glue tiny pieces together and paint the rocket in red and silver stripes. Today, he was taking it home after presenting it in class, but Jamal didn't know that trouble was about to find him. Across the street, Mrs. Linda Carter, a white woman in her late 40s, stood on her porch watering her plants. She noticed Jamal walking past her yard. Her eyes narrowed. She didn't recognize him, or at least, she thought she didn't single quotes T. Jamal was only looking at his box, making sure the rocket didn't tip over. But in Mrs. Carter's mind, the scene was different. She saw a strange boy walking slowly, glancing around. She convinced herself he was scoping out houses. She set down the watering can and called out sharply, "Hey, what are you doing here?" Jamal stopped, startled by the sudden voice. "I'm just going home, ma'am," he said politely. Mrs. Carter stepped closer, her hand on her hip. "Don't lie to me. You don't live here. I've seen boys like you before." "What's in that box?" "It's my science project," Jamal replied, holding it a little tighter. Her eyes narrowed even more. "Yeah, we'll see about that." Before Jamal could say anything else, she reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. He heard the familiar sound of numbers being dialed. 911. "What's your emergency?" The operator's voice came, faintly through the phone. "Yes," Mrs. Carter said loudly, glancing at Jamal as if she had caught a dangerous criminal. "There's a suspicious black male walking in my neighborhood. He's carrying something big. Could be stolen property." Jamal's stomach twisted. His mouth went dry. "I'm not stealing anything," he tried to say, but she turned her back to him, still talking to the operator. He looked around. A few curtains in nearby houses twitched, neighbors peeking. Out, Jamal felt his heart race. He had never been in trouble before. He didn't even like breaking school rules, let alone the law. Mrs. Carter ended the call and gave him a look that was both smug and cold. "You just wait here. The police will sort this out. I have to go home. You move, and it'll only make you look guiltier." She cut in. Minutes felt like hours. Jamal could hear his own breathing, fast and shallow. Then, in the distance, came the sharp, rising sound of police sirens. His grip on the box tightened. His science project suddenly felt heavy, like a weight pulling him down. 2 police cars pulled up with flashing lights. 4 officers stepped out quickly, hands resting on their belts. "That's him," Mrs. Carter pointed. "That's the one I called about." Bulbasaur's moved toward Jamal. One, a tall man with sunglasses, spoke firmly. "Son, put the box down." "It's just my school project," Jamal said, voice trembling. "I didn't do anything." "Put the box down," the officer repeated. Jamal knelt slowly, placing the box on the ground. Another officer walked over and opened it without asking. Inside was the rocket, neatly placed on a cushion of crumpled paper. The officer raised an eyebrow but didn't say anything. Mrs. Carter folded her arms. "See? Probably hiding something under that thing." "I'm not," Jamal said, louder now, desperation in his voice. One officer stepped closer. "Do you have ID?" "Am I 12?" Jamal said. "I don't have an ID. I just want to call my mom." The officers exchanged a quick look. Finally, the one with sunglasses nodded. "Go ahead." Jamal's hands shook as he reached into his pocket for his phone. He dialed his mother's number. When she picked up, her voice was warm at first. "Hey, baby, You home yet? No, Mom, Jamal whispered, his throat tight. The police, they think I did something. I didn't, I swear. There was silence on the other end for a moment. Then her tone changed, cold, controlled, and deadly serious. Where are you, Jamal? He gave her the street name. I'm on my way, she said, and the call ended. Jamal put his phone back into his pocket and looked up. The officers were still standing around him. Mrs. Carter looked satisfied, like she had done her good deed for the day. But Jamal knew, deep in his chest, that something was coming. Something that would make Mrs. Carter regret every single word she had said, and it was coming fast. The flashing blue and red lights reflected off the windows of nearby houses, casting the quiet street in a tense glow. The hum of engines filled the air as the police cars idled, their presence heavy and commanding. Jamal stood frozen, his sneakers glued to the pavement, clutching the edges of his box, even though it now sat on the ground. His heart thudded in his chest. He could feel the stares of neighbors from behind their curtains, their shadows moving like silent spectators in a cruel play. The first officer, a tall man with mirrored sunglasses, stepped forward. His expression was unreadable, but his tone was sharp. Step away from the box, kid. Jamal took a small step back, his hands trembling. It's just my science project, he said, trying to make his voice steady. Another officer, a woman with her hair tied back, circled around him. She was scanning his pockets, his shoes, even the way he stood, as if looking for danger that wasn't there. Where are you coming from? She asked. School, Jamal answered softly. Mrs. Carter cut in before Jamal could explain further. Officer, he was walking slowly past my house, looking around. He's carrying a big box. Who knows what's inside? I thought it was best to be safe. One of the officers exchanged a quick glance with the others. The woman officer knelt and lifted the box lid. Inside, resting on a bed of crumpled paper, was the small rocket red stripes running neatly along its sides, the silver paint still fresh. The officer raised her eyebrows. This your project? Yes, ma'am, Jamal said. Mrs. Carter scoffed. That's just a cover. You don't know what's hidden in there. The tall officer straightened. Son, do you have any ID on you? Jamal shook his head. I'm 12. I don't carry ID. The officer sighed. Who can we call? My mom, Jamal said quickly. The tall officer hesitated, then nodded. Call her. Jamal's hands shook as he pulled out his phone. His fingers almost slipped on the screen. He dialed the number he knew better than his own birthday. When his mom's voice answered, it was calm at first. Hey, baby, you home yet? No, Mom, he whispered, glancing at the officers standing around him. The police. They think I did something. I didn't. There was a sharp pause. When she spoke again, her voice had changed, no longer gentle, but clipped, powerful, and serious. Where are you? Jamal told her the street name. I'll be there in 5 minutes, she said, then hung up the moment the call ended. A wave of relief and fear mixed inside him. His mom was coming, and she was the one person who could fix this. But Mrs. Carter didn't seem worried. She stepped closer to the officers. You can't just take his word for it. Kids like him are always up to something. Just look at the way he's standing. The female officer frowned slightly, but didn't say anything. Jamal stared at the ground, trying not to let the woman's words sting. He remembered what his mom always told him. You know who you are. Don't let them tell you different. But standing here, surrounded by uniforms and flashing lights, those words felt harder to hold on to. The tall officer crossed his arms. We'll wait for his mother before making any decisions. Mrs. Carter didn't like that. And what if she's just as bad? What if the sudden low growl of an engine cut through her words? A sleek black SUV turned the corner at a speed just short of reckless. It stopped sharply by the curb. The driver's door swung open, and Dana Thompson stepped out. She wasn't just any mother. She was tall, commanding, wearing a crisp dark suit with a badge clipped to her belt. Her black hair was pulled back neatly, and her eyes scanned the scene with the sharpness of someone trained to see danger. Jamal's chest filled with a rush of relief. "Mom." Dana walked straight toward him, her steps quick but controlled. She looked at the officers first. "I'm Special Agent Dana Thompson, FBI." She held up her badge, the gold catching the flashing lights. "And this is my son." "Who's going to tell me why 4 police officers are surrounding him?" The officers shifted uncomfortably. Even the tall one in sunglasses straightened his. Mrs. Carter blinked, her mouth opening slightly before she could stop it. "Wait, FBI." Dana turned her gaze on her, and for a moment, Mrs. Carter looked like she wanted to step backward. But Dana's voice was calm when she spoke. "Ma'am, did you call the police on my son?" Mrs. Carter hesitated. I thought he was suspicious." "Suspicious how?" Dana asked, her tone still even, but with an edge that made every word cut. He had a box. I didn't recognize him." And Mrs. Carter's voice trailed. The female officer shifted uncomfortably, glancing at the others. A small crowd of neighbors had started gathering at a distance, their phones out, recording Dot and Mrs. Carter. For the first time, she looked nervous. The crowd of neighbors grew. With every passing second, some stood on their porches, arms folded, while others stayed half-hidden behind fences, their phone cameras held high like silent judges. Dana Thompson didn't glance at them. Her eyes stayed locked on her son. She stepped past the officers and crouched down so she was level with Jamal. "You okay, baby?" she asked softly. Jamal nodded, though his voice trembled. "Yeah, I just wanted to go home." Dana's jaw tightened. She stood, turning to face the officers again. "I'm going to ask once more, why is my 12-year-old being treated like a criminal?" The tall officer with sunglasses cleared his throat. "Ma'am, Agent Thompson, we received a call about a suspicious person." "And you responded?" "With 4 officers and flashing lights. For a child carrying a box," Dana said, her words measured. "Did anyone here stop to look at what was inside before assuming the worst?" The female officer spoke quietly, almost as if she didn't want to be heard. "It's a science project. A model rocket." Dana's eyebrow lifted. "Exactly. So now I want to hear what made him dangerous enough for this response." Mrs. Carter stepped forward, folding her arms. "I told you he was walking slowly, looking around. He had that box. I didn't recognize him," and Dana cut in sharply. "And that was enough. Walking while black is now probable cause." A few people in the crowd murmured in agreement. Phones were still recording. The tension in the air felt thick, almost alive. Mrs. Carter's lips pressed together. "I was just being cautious." "Cautious," Dana repeated slowly, as though tasting the word, or profiling. The white woman's cheeks flushed. "I don't have to listen to this." "Yes, you do," Dana said firmly. "Because your actions could have ended differently. My son could have been handcuffed, or worse." The officer shifted uncomfortably. The female officer looked like she wanted to say something, but the tall one shot her a warning glance. Dana took a step closer to Mrs. Carter. Her tone still controlled, but sharper now. "Do you have children, ma'am?" Mrs. Carter hesitated. "Yes." "How would you feel if someone saw them on the street and decided, without proof, that they were criminals? Called the police, had them surrounded, searched, in front of their neighbors?" Mrs. Carter didn't answer. She looked away, her fingers tightening around her phone. Dana didn't press further. She turned back to Jamal and took the box from the ground, holding it up for the crowd to see. The rocket gleamed in the sunlight, the paint catching little flashes of red and silver. "This," Dana said loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear, is what my son was carrying. This is what you all saw and somehow thought was dangerous." A few neighbors looked down, embarrassed. Dana handed the box back to Jamal, then addressed the officers again. "I want an official record that this was a false report. And I want to know if there will be any action taken against someone who abuses 911 calls for personal bias." The tall officer hesitated. "Ma'am, that's not my department to decide." "Then give me the name of who can decide," Dana replied. Her voice like steel. He finally nodded, muttering something to another officer, who began writing down details. Mrs. Carter shifted uncomfortably, her earlier confidence gone. "Is ridiculous. I was just looking out for the neighborhood." "No," Dana said, turning her gaze back on her. "You were looking out for yourself, and you put a child in danger to do it." Jamal held his mother's arm tightly. For the first time since the sirens arrived, he felt safe. Dana took out her phone and began recording. "For the record," she said to the officers, "my name is Special Agent Dana Thompson, badge number 2471. I will be filing a formal complaint about this stop, as well as the false call that started it. And I will be requesting the 911 audio for evidence." The tall officer's jaw clenched, but he nodded. The female officer spoke up, her voice firmer now. "Agent Thompson, I'm sorry. We should have handled this differently." Dana looked at her for a long moment, then gave a short nod. "Apology accepted, but I want it in writing." Mrs. Carter turned to leave, muttering under her breath. But when she glanced back, she caught the eyes of several neighbors, and not one of them looked supportive. Dana stood tall, her arm around Jamal's shoulders. "Come on, baby. Let's go home." As they walked to the SUV, the sound of whispers followed them. People would talk, videos would spread, and Mrs. Carter, well, she would soon realize this wasn't going to be forgotten. Jamal climbed into the passenger seat, placing the rocket carefully on his lap. He looked at his mom. "Thanks for coming so fast." Dana started the engine. "Always. And don't you forget, when someone tries to tell you who you are based on what they think, you make sure you show them the truth." Jamal nodded. For the first time all afternoon, he smiled. Dana drove away, the crowd slowly dispersing behind them. But the story wasn't over. It was just beginning. The next morning, the neighborhood was buzzing. The incident from yesterday had already made its way to social media, and not just in their town. Video clips from the bystanders had been shared thousands of times, hashtags trending, and comments flooding in from people across the country. Mrs. Carter hadn't stepped outside since her blinds stayed closed and the curtains in her living room were drawn tight. She didn't know how to handle the sudden attention. Every time her phone buzzed with a notification, her stomach sank. Meanwhile, Dana Thompson was already in motion. She had been up since dawn, making calls, sending emails, requesting the official 911 call recording. That afternoon, Dana and Jamal arrived at the local police station. Jamal's science project sat safely in the back seat of the SUV. Dana wasn't letting it out of her sight again. Inside, the station buzzed with the usual noise of ringing phones and shuffling papers. Dana walked straight to the front desk, her FBI badge catching the light. "I'm here for the false report. Filed yesterday by Linda Carter. I want the full transcript, the audio file, and the body cam footage." The desk sergeant, a tired-looking man in his 50s, shifted uncomfortably. "Agent Thompson, we're still reviewing the situation." Dana's voice was calm but firm. "Then review it quickly. I have a meeting with your chief in 30 minutes, and I'd like to come prepared." Jamal stood beside her, holding her hand. Even here, in the middle of a police station, he could feel people looking at him. Some with curiosity, others with pity. He kept his eyes on the floor. The sergeant nodded stiffly. "I'll get the files." While they waited, Dana crouched down to Jamal's level. "You doing okay?" He shrugged. "Yeah, just don't like being here." "I know," Dana said. Softly, "but we have to make sure the truth is in the open. That way, no one can twist what happened." A few minutes later, the sergeant returned with a USB drive and a printed transcript. "This is the call and the preliminary incident report." Dana took it, thanked him, and led Jamal out at home. Dana plugged the USB into her laptop. Jamal sat beside her, chewing on his lip. The audio file played, and there it was. Mrs. Carter's voice came through, clear and confident. "Yes, there's a suspicious black male walking past my house. He's carrying a large box. Looks like stolen property. He's moving slow, looking around. I'm afraid for my safety." Jamal's eyebrows furrowed. She made it sound like, "I was dangerous." Dana put a hand on his shoulder. "That's exactly why we're doing this." Next came the body cam footage. It showed the moment the officers arrived, 4 adults in uniform surrounding a boy clutching a cardboard box. The female officer opening the box, the rocket inside. Jamal's quiet, shaking voice asking to call his mom. The truth wasn't just in words, it was right there in moving pictures. 2 days later, Dana walked into a community meeting at the town hall. The place was packed. Neighbors, local reporters, and city officials filled every seat. At the front, the police chief and a few council members sat behind a long table. Mrs. Carter was there too. Sitting stiffly in the second row, she looked like she hadn't slept in days. The council chair tapped the microphone. "We're here to discuss the incident on Willow Creek Street involving a false police report and the treatment of a minor." Dana stood when it was her turn to speak. She carried a small folder, but her voice alone commanded the room. "On that day, my 12-year-old son was stopped by 4 officers because of a false and racially biased 911 call. The caller, Mrs. Linda Carter, claimed he looked suspicious for walking home from school with a science project." A few people in the crowd shifted uncomfortably. Dana continued, her tone steady. "The body cam footage shows there was no threat, no crime, and no reason for such a response. My son was frightened, humiliated, and treated as a suspect because of his skin color." She held up the printed transcript. "This is the exact 911 call. The words speak for themselves. And this is why such false calls must be taken seriously. They waste police resources, put innocent people in danger, and erode trust between the community and law enforcement." We've all seen the video online. It's embarrassing. This isn't who we want to be as a community. Others nodded. Someone muttered, "She should apologize." Mrs. Carter looked like she wanted to disappear, but Dana didn't press further. The truth was already out. The videos, the call, the footage, they spoke louder than anything Dana could say. That night, as Dana tucked Jamal into bed, he asked quietly, "Do you think she's sorry?" Dana thought for a moment. Maybe. But even if she is, that doesn't erase what happened. What matters is you know you did nothing wrong. And now, everyone else knows it too. Jamal nodded slowly. "I just want people to see me, not just my skin." Dana's eyes softened. "One day, baby, they will. And until then, you keep being you. Smart, kind, strong." Jamal smiled a little, "and good at science projects." Dana laughed quietly, kissing his forehead. Especially that. By the next morning, the incident had made it onto national news. Headlines spoke about racial bias, false 911 calls, and a mother who happened to be an FBI agent standing up for her son. Mrs. Carter stayed indoors, avoiding reporters. But the truth had already escaped the walls of her house, and it wasn't going back. In a week had passed since the incident. But the ripples were still spreading. The video was still circulating online, now with over 2 million views. News channels replayed the scene of Jamal standing quietly, clutching his box. And the moment Dana stepped out of her SUV with her FBI badge flashing in the sun, but it wasn't. The online attention that mattered most to Dana, it was what happened inside their own community. The town's middle school had invited her to speak at an assembly. Not as Special Agent Thompson, but as Jamal's mother. They wanted her to talk about prejudice, safety, and what it meant to stand up for the truth. On the day of the assembly, the school auditorium was full. Students filled the seats, their chatter echoing off the high ceiling. Teachers stood along the walls, and in the front row, Jamal sat with his classmates. He had his science project in his lap, this time by choice. Dana stepped up to the microphone, her eyes sweeping the room. She didn't start with the incident. Instead, she began with a question. How many of you have ever been judged before? Someone even spoke to you. Dozens of hands went up, more than she expected. That feeling you just remembered. Dana said, her voice calm but strong, is what my son felt the day a neighbor called the police on him. Not because of what he did, but because of what she thought when she saw him. A murmur ran through the students. She gestured toward Jamal. He was walking home from school, carrying this. She reached down, took the box, and opened it too. Revealed the rocket. A science project. Nothing dangerous. But in that moment, someone decided he was a threat. Dana didn't sugarcoat her words. That decision could have ruined his life, all because of a false assumption. She told them about the importance of asking questions before making judgments, of looking at a person's actions instead of their skin, their clothes, or where they're standing. It's not just about avoiding trouble, she said. It's about being fair, being human. She looked at the teachers. It starts here, with what you teach and how you respond. Because the world outside this school will not always be kind. And the best defense against ignorance is education. After the assembly, students surrounded Jamal. Some told him they'd seen the video online. Others apologized 4 times they might have judged someone without knowing the truth. One boy said quietly, "You're braver than I would have been." Jamal shrugged, a little embarrassed. "I just stood there." "Yeah," the boy replied. "But you stood there without running. That's something." For the first time, Jamal realized that his calm that day had been a kind of strength. Later that week, the community center held an open forum. Dana attended, this time with Jamal sitting beside her at the front. The hall was packed with residents. The air buzzed with a mix of tension and curiosity. A moderator stood at the podium. "Tonight, we're here to discuss racial bias, public safety, and how to rebuild trust." Several speakers took the floor, pastors, teachers, and activists. When it was Dana's turn, she didn't go after Mrs. Carter directly. Instead, she spoke to everyone. We all have moments where we make assumptions. The question is, do we stop and check ourselves before acting on them? Because when we don't, we risk harming someone innocent. Sometimes, like in Jamal's case, that harm is public and humiliating. Sometimes, it's worse. She paused, letting the words sink in. I work for the FBI. I've seen how much damage one false assumption can cause in the field. But I never expected it to happen to my own son on his own street. Her voice softened. I'm not here to make you fear calling 911. If you see real danger, call. But if you're just unsure, talk to the person first. Look at the situation with clear eyes. Don't let bias make the call for you. When Dana finished, a few people clapped softly, then louder, until it became applause. Jamal felt a strange warmth in his chest, pride. Not just in his mom, but in the fact that people were actually listening. After the forum ended, some neighbors came up to them. One older man said, I've lived here 30 years, and I think we all needed to hear that. Another woman looked at Jamal. I'm sorry for what you went through. I'll make sure my kids hear your story. Even Mrs. Carter had come, sitting quietly in the back. She didn't speak that night, but Jamal noticed her watching, not with the hard glare she'd given before, but with something else. Maybe shame, maybe reflection. Back home, Jamal helped Dana put the rocket on a shelf in the living room. "Why here?" he asked. "So every time we see it," Dana said, "we remember what happened and how we turned it into something that could help others learn." Jamal looked at the rocket, then at his mom. "Do you think it's working?" "The lesson," Dana smiled faintly. "It's a start." That night, Jamal lay in bed thinking about everything. The flashing lights, the crowd of neighbors, the weight of being accused, and the way his mom had stood up for him. He realized something important. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about making sure it didn't happen to the next kid walking home from school, and that thought made him feel stronger than he'd ever felt before. By the end of the week, the small neighborhood incident was no longer small. News vans lined the street in front of the Carter house. Bright camera lights glared against the windows. Reporters stood with microphones, speaking into live broadcasts. Viewers, the story of a 12-year-old boy wrongfully reported to police has now gained nationwide attention, sparking debates about racial bias and misuse of emergency services. Clips from the body cam footage played on every channel. Some news anchors shook their heads in disbelief. Others brought in experts to discuss the dangers of profiling calls. The hashtags #WalkingWhileBlack and #JusticeForJamal trended for days. In the middle of all this, Dana kept her composure. She had refused interviews at first, focusing instead on protecting Jamal's peace. But when a major national network reached out for a sit-down conversation promising the full story from their perspective, she agreed. The interview was held in the FBI's local office. Dana wore her badge, not as a prop, but as a symbol. Jamal sat beside her, his science project rocket on the table between them. The reporter leaned forward. "Agent Thompson, why did you choose to speak out publicly?" Dana's gaze was steady. "Because this isn't just about my son. It's about the next child who's walking home, minding their business, and suddenly becomes a suspect for existing in the wrong place, in the wrong skin." Jamal spoke too, his voice shy but clear. "I just want people to see kids like me as kids, not danger." The reporter nodded, and Mrs. Carter. Dana didn't smirk or gloat. Mrs. Carter made a choice. Choices have consequences. Mrs. Carter stood slowly, her hands trembling slightly. "I want to apologize to Jamal, to his family, to this community." Her voice cracked. "I thought I was doing the right thing. But I see now that I acted on an assumption. A wrong one, and I am sorry." She turned to Jamal. "You didn't deserve what happened." Jamal, sitting beside his mom, didn't say anything at first. And then, quietly, "Okay?" It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was enough to close that moment without anger. After the meeting, reporters swarmed outside. Dana shielded Jamal from the chaos, guiding him to the SUV. But before she got in, she looked straight into one of the cameras. "Let this be the lesson," she said. "Truth matters. Assumptions don't." The clip went viral overnight. At school, Jamal's life had shifted. Some kids treated him like a local celebrity. Others simply gave him more respect. A few days later, his science teacher pulled him aside. "You know, Jamal," she said, smiling, "this project of yours ended up teaching a lot more than rocket science." He grinned, just a little. "Guess so." That weekend, Dana and Jamal spent the afternoon at the park. No cameras, no speeches, just a mother and son enjoying the sun. Jamal launched his rocket for the first time, watching it soar high before parachuting down. Dana laughed, clapping as it landed softly on the grass. "Perfect flight, baby." "Yeah," Jamal said, picking it up. "Guess it's not just for Show any more." Dana looked at him, pride filling her chest. "Neither are you." By then, the public had made up its mind. To most, Jamal wasn't just the boy from the video anymore. He was a reminder of why things needed to change. And Dana wasn't just the FBI mom, she was the voice that refused to let silence win. But as they walked home from the park, Dana knew the fight wasn't over. It never really would be. Still, today felt like a winning month had passed. Since the day flashing lights painted the quiet street in blue and red. The media vans were gone now. The crowds of reporters had moved on to other stories. And the neighborhood had returned to its usual stillness. But for Jamal and Dana, things would never be exactly the same. Jamal still walked the same route home from school. But now, people waved. Some neighbors, who had barely noticed him before, now stopped to say hello. The older man who lived on the corner even gave him a thumbs up whenever he saw him. It wasn't about fame. Jamal didn't like being the boy from the video. But he liked knowing people saw him differently now. They saw him as more than a shadow passing by. At home, the model rocket had a new place of honor. It stood on a small shelf in the living room, right next to a framed photo of Jamal holding it on launch day. Dana had put a small brass plate beneath it that read, "Truth wins." Whenever Jamal glanced at it, he remembered not just the fear of that day, but the way he and his mother had faced it together. One Saturday morning, Dana sat at the kitchen table with her laptop open, typing up a proposal for a new community initiative, a program aimed at educating residents on responsible druis, use of emergency services, and recognizing unconscious bias. Jamal wandered in, still in his pajamas. "You working?" "Always," Dana said with a half smile. "But this is for something important." He sat across from her. "More speeches, more change," she corrected. "We're going to hold workshops, bring in speakers, even have student-led discussions. I want kids like you to be part of it." "Me?" Jamal blinked. "What would I even say?" Dana looked him in the eye. "You'd tell them what it felt like, not the video version. The real version, and you'd tell them what you want to see change." Jamal thought about that for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. "Okay." The first workshop happened 2 weeks later in the community center's gym. Dozens of chairs were set in rows, with a projector screen showing the title, "See the person, not the assumption." Dana spoke first, then a local pastor, and then it was Jamal's turn. He walked to the front, clutching a single index card. His voice was quiet at first, but it grew stronger as he spoke. "That day, I was scared. I didn't know why someone thought I was dangerous. I wasn't doing anything wrong. I was just me." He paused, glancing at the faces in the crowd. "But it made me think about how many other kids feel the same way every day for no reason. I don't want that for anyone else." The applause was warm and real. Dana, sitting in the front row, couldn't stop smiling. Meanwhile, Mrs. Carter kept her distance. She hadn't spoken to Jamal or Dana again since her public apology. But Dana had heard she'd attended 2 of the workshops quietly, sitting in the back. Whether it was guilt, curiosity, or the start of change, Dana didn't know. But she hoped it was the last one, not one afternoon, after school. Jamal was walking home when he saw a younger boy he didn't know, maybe 9 years old, drop his backpack and spill books across the sidewalk. A woman in a nearby yard looked up, frowning, almost stepping forward like she might say something. Jamal didn't hesitate. He walked over, knelt down, and helped the boy gather his books. "Here you go," he said with a smile. The woman relaxed, returning to her gardening. The moment passed. But as Jamal kept walking, he realized sometimes it only takes one small action to change what someone sees. By summer, Dana's program had gained attention beyond their town. She was invited to speak at a state conference on law enforcement and community relations. Jamal went with her, carrying the rocket like it was part of their story, because it was in her keynote speech. Dana didn't just talk about the incident. She talked about the day after, the week after, and the months after. About how the real work isn't in reacting to injustice, but in building something better afterward. Justice isn't just about holding someone accountable for what they've done, she said. It's also about preventing the next harm before it happens. When they returned home from the conference, Jamal asked her, "Do you think this will really stop stuff like what happened to me?" Dana was quiet for a moment. Not completely, not right away. But every time someone thinks twice before making a call like that, every time a kid gets to walk home without being afraid, that's a win. Jamal nodded slowly. Then we keep going. Months later, on the anniversary of the incident, Dana and Jamal went for a walk together along the same route he had taken that day. The sun was setting, casting long golden shadows across the street. Jamal was taller now, his shoulders a little straighter. Dana walked beside him, her hand resting lightly on his back. As they passed Mrs. Carter's house, the curtains shifted. For a second, their eyes met through the glass. Mrs. Carter gave a small nod, not a wave, not a smile, but an acknowledgement. Dana nodded back once and kept walking. Some things don't need words. When they reached home, Jamal placed the rocket back on its shelf. He stood there for a moment, looking at it. Then he turned to his mom. "You know," he said, "next year I'm building a bigger one, taller, faster." Dana grinned. "That's my boy." And as the rocket gleamed in the evening light, it wasn't just a science project anymore. It was a reminder that